Hey guys, tonight we tiptoe barefoot under starlight across dew-kissed grass into a world where butter glows like gold and cows are worshipped like queens. You find yourself in a quiet corner of ancient India, long before traffic jams and takeaway apps, where the night buzzes with insects and distant chants drift lazily from village shrines. The air smells of cow dung smoke, sweet curd and dust. Welcome to a time where the soft lowing of cattle isn't just background noise. It's the heartbeat of civilization. You glance around clay houses cluster together like sleeping turtles. A small fire crackles in the distance, its light flickering on the face of an old priest, stirring a copper pot of ghee. And over in the shadows cows, dozens of them calm, slow blinking, utterly unbothered their breath, misting into the cool air. You might not know it yet, but those cows, they outrank most humans in this timeline. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pull your thin cotton wrap tighter and wander past the sleeping huts. No one's guarding the cows. No need stealing. One of these creatures would be a spiritual disaster. These cows are sacred, not in the casual, cute animal sense, but in the literal symbol of the earth, mother, and cosmic order sense. In ancient Indian cosmology, the cow isn't just an animal. She's a walking embodiment of life, nourishment, and weirdly enough, law. That old priest by the fire, he's not just melting butter for his midnight snack, he's preparing it for a yajna, a Vedic fire sacrifice. And that clarified butter or ghee will be flung into the flames as an offering to the gods. Why? Ghee. Because it comes from cows, and cows are divine. You're already starting to see a theme, huh? Let's zoom out a bit. It's around 1500 BCE, and the Vedic peoples, the ones who gave us the early scriptures of Hinduism, are migrating through the north of India, bringing with them horses, rituals, and a whole philosophy built around cattle. According to the Rig Veda, one of their oldest sacred texts, cows are agnya, or not to be slain. They're praised in hymns, they're thanked in prayers. They're basically the Beyoncé of bovine world. You sit down on a low stone bench as someone offers you a warm clay cup of milk. You sip slowly. No sugar, just creamy simplicity. That milk. It's not just breakfast. It's part of a cosmic contract. The cow gives, and you respect. Simple. Now here's your first quirky tidbit of the night. Some Vedic rituals didn't just involve using cow products, they involved inviting the cow to the ritual as a guest. Yes, a literal cow standing there next to the priest. Possibly judging everyone. You hear the rustle of grass behind you. A small group of villagers is herding a cow toward the riverbank. It's not for a bath. It's for a ritual purification, where the cow symbolically carries away the sins of the people. As you follow them, careful not to trip over a sleeping goat, someone explains that the cow is earth. The cow is sky, the cow is sacrifice itself. Heavy stuff for something that chews cud all day. Now let's talk politics. Because believe it or not, a person's status in society, especially among early Aryan clans, could be linked to how many cows they had. In fact, some scholars argue that the very word for wealth in Sanskrit, gomat, literally means having cows. So if you had more cows, you weren't just rich. You were practically a walking god. Kings. Sure, they had gold and chariots and pointy hats. But without cows, they were like influencers with no Wi-Fi. Completely irrelevant. Willpower pulsed in pastures, not palaces. And here's where it gets a little weirder. Historians still argue whether this reverence for cows came before their religious importance, or whether the spiritual status came first. And then society wrapped economics around it. It's the ancient chicken or egg problem, except, with more mooing and butter. Meanwhile, the stars drift overhead and someone softly playing a flute. Not for you, for the cows. Yes, musical devotion is a thing. You lie back on the warm earth, eyes half closed, and imagine a world where cattle or currency milk is holy, and even a little cow burp might be seen as auspicious. Of course, there's a practical side to all of this. A cow gives milk which feeds the children. That milk becomes curd, butter, cheese, ghee. Even the dung is valuable for fuel fertilizer. Even as primitive antiseptic plaster, don't ask. Every part of the cow has a use, a purpose, and somehow a cosmic justification. You could argue she's the most efficient little spiritual machine ever to walk the subcontinent. And the night deepens, the fire dies down, the cows shift gently in their sleep. One kicks in a dream. Another sighs like she's carrying the worries of 1,000 lifetimes, and maybe she is. Because in ancient India, cows weren't just more important than kings, they were the kingdom itself. The morning slips in like a whisper, soft and golden, brushing its fingers across the village as you stir awake. You're still lying, near the spurstamang, fire pit dew clinging to your toes when the first cowbell tinkles through the still air. The herd is already on the move, led by a sleepy boy with a stick too big for him and a whistle too soft to matter. You blink, stretch, and follow the procession. Because in this world where cows walk, you walk. Today you're going to learn why these creatures weren't just respected, they were sanctified. We're diving into how ancient Vedic texts turned the cow from a barnyard beast into a cosmic celebrity. If yesterday was about the social buzz, today's about the spiritual spotlight. You trail behind the herd as they lumber toward the pasture. The cows seem to know exactly where they're going. You, on the other hand, nearly twist an ankle on a rock. One of them glances back, possibly in judgment. Now, if you think the reverence is all just peace and love chanting, think again. The Rigveda, composed over 3000 years ago, spends an obscene amount of time waxing poetic about cows. Not kings, not warriors, cows. You learn as das that the cow is described as the giver of strength, the bringer of prosperity, and even the mother of all gods, which means essentially that ancient hymns were saying, hey, forget crowns and conquests. Thank your local dairy auntie. You settle into the shade of a banyan tree as a priest begins. His morning chants the sacred mantras, rolling like a soft tide. He invokes Kamadhenu, the mythical cow of plenty, believed to grant any wish. She's not just divine, she's divine with benefits. Think of her as a four-legged vending machine for wealth and divine favor. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By around 800 BCE, the Brahmanas' elaborate commentaries on the Vedas systematically codified this reverence. They didn't just adore the cow, they institutionalized her. Ritual manuals now detailed precisely how cows should be treated. Sacrificed, protected, praised, and occasionally bribed. Yes, bribes of butter were a thing, but, and here's your quirky twist, there's also a hymn that compares a cow's tongue to honey, her breath to sweet perfume, and her hooves to the steps of thunderclouds, which suggests that someone somewhere was seriously into poetic cow metaphors. Maybe too into them. A breeze picks up carrying the scent of milk and smoke. A small boy pats his cow on the flank and murmurs something that sounds suspiciously like an apology. Turns out talking to cows was considered good practice. They're believed to understand. And more importantly, to remember. See, in the Vedic worldview, the cow wasn't just alive, she had agency. If you wronged her, the gods might take her side. This is where the laws got mystical. Harming a cow could cause not just punishment in this life, but karmic debts. So steep, you'd end up being reborn as something with way fewer legs. You're handed a folded palm leaf manuscript and asked to help copy a verse from the Atharva Veda. You don't understand Sanskrit, but the priest whispers the meaning. Do not eat the flesh of the cow. It is full of soul. It is the home of wealth. You nod and pretend to write, though. You mostly just doodle spirals. Historians still argue whether this divine cow concept started purely as economic reverence or if it was theological from the outset. Some claim it evolved from Proto-Indo-European cattle cults. Others believe it's a purely Indian construct tied to agrarian survival. Whatever the root by this point in history, it's full-blown worship with a side of milk. Now you're ushered toward a small temple at the edge of the field. No statue of a human deity inside. Just a massive sculpture of a reclining cow carved from black basalt, polished smooth by centuries of touch. A garland of marigolds hangs around her neck, and someone's even dabbed sandalwood paste between her carved brows. People queue quietly to touch her feet. You do too. Because at this point, why not? Later back at the village, a woman beckons you into her home. She's making panchagavya, a sacred mixture made of 5 cow products: milk, curd, ghee, dung, and urine. Yes, you heard right. The smell hits you before the bowl does. It's thick, yellowish, and shockingly used in purification rituals. You try not to gag. She offers you some. You decline politely through a window while pretending to check on the weather. It's not just weird superstition, though. Some historians note that early medical texts like the Karaka Samhita include panchagavya in recipes for skin disease, indigestion, and even mental health. The logic was simple: if cows are holy, everything from them must be healing, including the less drinkable bits. You wander back to the shade, your stomach still recovering. A nearby elder tells you about how cows used to be named and treated like family. They were bathed, blessed, and sometimes even dressed up for festivals, complete with anklets and forehead jewels. If one died, whole villages might fast in mourning, and as the sun arcs across the sky, you realize this isn't just about religion. It's about identity. For these people, a cow is everything: a source of food, fuel, status, spirituality, and survival. They don't just honor the cow, they center their entire world around her. You lie back again, this time using your bundle of rolled-up cloth as a pillow. A cow saunters past and flicks her tail at your face like a royal scepter. She doesn't look at you. She doesn't need to. She knows exactly who she is. You wake up to the sound of rhythmic, clanking metal on stone, quick and steady. It's not warfare. It's breakfast, or more accurately, ghee making, which around here is close and military. Operation A. Group of women are churning butter like their lives depend on it. Which, in a roundabout way, they kind of do. You follow the buttery symphony to an open courtyard, where a massive wooden churn spins lazily in a clay pot the size of a barrel. The air smells rich and nutty. A young girl with sharp elbows and zero patience is slapping the churn rope, rhythmically pausing every few minutes to flick foam off the top. You watch a blob of butter rise from the froth like it's being born. This, you're told, is white gold, the base of ghee, the most sacred and versatile substance in your entire surroundings. And today, you're going to learn how this humble byproduct of a cow's digestive journey shaped religion, rituals, and the economy in ways that would make a modern accountant cry. Let's start with the obvious. Ghee wasn't just food, it was divine fuel. During Vedic times and well into classical India, ghee was the essential offering poured into yajnas, sacrificial fires meant to please the gods. Want rain, offer, ghee. Want sons, more ghee. Hoping your enemies get food poisoning. Yep, ghee again. You crouch beside the fire altar as the village priest tilts a small bronze ladle. The ghee hisses as it hits the flame, releasing an earthy sweetness. Sparks fly upward like incense confetti. You ask what the ritual's for. The priest, with a dode, smile only slightly too intense, answers, balance. And here's your mainstream historical fact. These rituals weren't just symbolic, they were central to Rajasuya and Ashvamedha, major royal ceremonies where kings tried to prove their worth by sacrificing not animals, not enemies, but insane quantities of ghee. Literal rivers of it. That's not a joke. Some ancient texts describe needing hundreds of cows just to produce the required amount. Now the quirky part. In some regions, priests would carry ghee-soaked sticks and paint the flames with butter patterns. Think of it like holy finger painting for fire gods. One text even details a ghee bath where statues of deities were drenched in warm, golden fat. It's unclear whether the gods enjoyed this, but it definitely left a mark. Back in your courtyard, a grandmother scoops a cup of fresh ghee and slathers it on your flatbread before you can object. You bite in. It's transcendently creamy, like butter with a PhD, and there's something vaguely smoky in the surdest aftertaste. Probably the smell of spiritual superiority. But ghee wasn't just for gods, it was also currency. Temples accepted donations in the form of jars of ghee. Workers were paid partially in ghee. Poorer families even saved up ghee. Like modern folks, save cash, one ladle at a time. You sit by a storage room where rows of clay jars glisten with golden tops. like a liquid treasure trove. Here's the kicker. Historians still argue whether the massive consumption of ghee in rituals helped fuel an entire agroeconomic shift. Think about it, if your society needs thousands of liters of cow butter for religious events, that means a lot more cows, a lot more milk, and a logistical system to process, store, and transport it. Some scholars argue this demand accelerated dairy innovations long before other cultures caught on. As the sun rises higher, you're guided to the temple's kitchen. The cook, bare-chested and sweat-soaked, drops ghee into a skillet big enough to roast a goat. The pan screams, and soon a pile of spices follow: cumin, turmeric, cardamom. Within minutes, the air is transformed into something that could awaken the dead. Not that anyone's dying today. This is all in honor of the Annaprashana, a baby's first solid meal ceremony. A tiny child, more ghee than human, sits blinking on a silver tray while family members spoon rice into his reluctant mouth. You're told it's good luck if he burps. He doesn't disappoint. The crowd applauds. Meanwhile, you're still chewing on this idea that butter can be holy. It's ridiculous, it's adorable, and it makes weird sense. This world isn't about calories, it's about transformation. Milk becomes butter, butter becomes ghee, ghee becomes fire, fire becomes prayer, and prayer becomes cosmic favor. You're just trying not to spill any. And lest you think it's all sunshine and dairy, there's an unspoken tension here. Ghee, being so valuable, was often targeted by thieves. That's right, butter bandits. Some texts describe monks guarding temple stores overnight, while others mention cursed pots that would explode if touched by sinners. Sounds dramatic. But when your economy is partially built on melted cow fat, you take precautions. A boy near you sneezes. His grandmother responds by rubbing a drop of ghee onto his forehead, murmuring a protective chant. Ghee apparently can ward off evil eyes, nightmares, and dry elbows. She offers to smear some on your temples. You politely decline. Still, you notice something. Everyone around you moves with a quiet reverence, not just toward cows, but toward what they produce. In a world without refrigeration, every spoon of ghee is a miracle of preservation, patience, and prayer. It doesn't rot. It doesn't spoil. It just waits. Like time in a jar. The evening cools and you sit by the fire again. Another ladle of ghee vanishes into the flames with a hiss and a puff. You watch the smoke rise toward the stars. Somewhere up there, the gods are supposed to be watching. If they're real, I hope they appreciate the flavor. Because honestly, you're starting to understand why this stuff was worth more than gold. The next day, you find yourself kneeling awkwardly in a dusty courtyard in front of a rather stern-looking elder who is explaining how to barter with cows, not milk, not her. The cows themselves. You squint against the sun and try to follow along. Apparently, in this slice of ancient India, cows are more than just holy. They're legal tender. Forget shiny coins or stamped silver. Here you could pay a debt, purchase land, bribe a minister, or even brace yourself, arrange a marriage, all with the correct quantity and quality of cattle. You're about to laugh, but then you realize he's absolutely serious. And so is the math. One fine milking cow, he says, pointing dramatically, is worth 4 old bulls or 3 goats or half a priest's monthly fee, depending on milk yield and temperament. You nod, trying to look wise. Somewhere a cow snorts with disapproval. Let's talk value systems. In ancient Vedic society, the more cows you had, the more power you wielded. Kings hoarded them like Fabergé eggs. Temples acquired them in droves. Even sages kept secret herds tucked away in forest ashrams like bovine emergency funds. There are verses in the Satapatha Brahmana describing the perfect ritual cow, down to the texture of her hide and the timbre of her moo. This wasn't pet love. This was portfolio management, your mainstream historical fact. Today, ancient Indian law codes such as the Manusmriti and Arthashastra outline very specific rules for cow exchange, theft, gifting, and even cow disputes. Yes, cow-related litigation was a whole thing. Lost your neighbor's calf. You could be fined 2 cows. Gave away a cow without proper blessings. That could be seen as null and void. Imagine the ancient courtroom drama. Your Honor, that was my cow's cousin's daughter. And here's your quirky tidbit. A well-known Vedic unit of measurement wasn't a foot or a hand, it was a cow's stride. Buildings were measured in cow lengths. Property lines also based on how far a cow could comfortably wander. So, Technically, ancient landowners were in a very literal way, thinking like cows. Now you're led to a mural depicting a Svayamvara, an old school, choose your husband ceremony. Princes show up with poetry, flower garlands, and you guessed it, herds of cows. The wealthier the groom, the more cows he brings. Some kings offered over 1,000 cattle to win a princess's hand. You can't help wondering how that worked logistically. Did the cows just parade through the palace gates like a furry wedding procession? You sit beside a scribe who is transcribing ancient records of royal gifts. One scroll describes a king donating 10,000 cows to a priest after a successful eclipse ritual. That sounds generous until you realize the cows weren't just given away. Each one came with a cowherd, a calf, a blanket, a pot of ghee, and a bag of grain. This was luxury gifting, ancient edition. Historians still argue whether this cow-centric economy was egalitarian or exploitative. On the one hand, everyone valued cows from priests to farmers. On the other, ownership was heavily skewed. Kings and high-caste Brahmins controlled enormous herds, while many lower-caste folks had to borrow cows, rent cows, or work for milk like spiritual Uber drivers. You're now invited to a gograma, a temporary cow camp built outside the city walls. These pop-up cow colonies were designed for trade care and ritual quarantine. Yes, cows had quarantine before it was cool. Some were sick. Some were pregnant. Some were just too valuable to let roam free. You walk among them admiring their decorated horns, silk forehead tassels, and names etched in silver tags. One particularly plump cow blinks at you. Her name is Padma. You decide she's probably richer than you. A local merchant offers you a deal. Trade one healthy milker for 5 bags of rice and a bronze dagger. You consider it, but then remember that you technically don't own a cow. Not even a goat. This is like showing up to Wall Street with a say, handful of pebbles. As evening sets in, a debate erupts among villagers. Apparently, someone's cow wandered onto someone else's grain patch. Raised voices. Wild gesturing. Someone brings out a measuring rope. Guess what? Unit they use. Yep, cow lengths. It's resolved peacefully, but the elder leans in and mutters. In the old days, they would have settled that with a milk duel. You blink, what? Turns out a milk duel was a bizarre but apparently real dispute method in some communities. 2 cows were milked side by side, and the cow, with the greater yield, won the argument for her owner. That's utterly absurd, but also brilliant. You return to the village square, where a bard begins to sing an old cow ballad. It's a lilting tune about a hero who wins not through battle but by donating 101 cows to a holy man and being blessed with eternal peace. The moral: move first, swing sword later. As you stretch out under a mango tree, a cow nestles down nearby and exhales deeply. You do too. In this world, wealth doesn't glitter, it grazes. The sun's barely risen, and already there's smoke in the air. Not from war, but from breakfast fires and the smoldering embers of one of India's most ancient taboos, the cow on the plate. Today your sleepy-eyed journey takes a twist. You've walked through temples, listened to cow ballads, even sniffed blessed butter. But now you find yourself stumbling into a subject most villagers avoid like a muddy monsoon path: beef. Or more specifically, whether people in ancient India ever ate it, and what happened when they stopped. Let's set the scene. You're walking along a dirt path lined with sal trees, following a herd as they're led toward a sacred grove. It's peaceful, birds chirp, a cow sneezes. And just as you're settling into the tranquility, someone casually mentions that their great-great-grandfather's texts might have included beef in ritual feasts. Wait, what? Your guide, a scholarly man with a beard that seems to contain its own Vedic library, nods solemnly. Yes, he says, some of the oldest hymns in the Rig Veda speak of bulls being sacrificed in great ceremonies. You pause, cow stunned. But weren't cows sacred? Now we're entering the gray zone. And here's your mainstream historical fact. Many early Vedic rituals, especially those for royal occasions, included animal sacrifice, and that occasionally included cattle, especially bulls. The sacrifices were viewed as sacred offerings to the gods. The meat, when cooked and shared, was consumed not in gluttony but in reverence. It wasn't dinner. It was cosmic nutrition. Of course, not everyone's thrilled about this interpretation. Historians still argue fiercely over just how widespread cow consumption was in Vedic times. Was it common among elites? Rare, symbolic only? Some texts seem to celebrate it, others outright ban it. Scholars are divided like, well, a sacred cow between two rival kings. And here's your quirky tidbit. One ancient sage, Yajnavalkya, famously declared, "I do eat beef provided it is tender," which frankly sounds like something someone might say just before getting unfollowed by every Brahmin in the neighborhood. You stop by a small shrine where a priest is busy decorating a clay image of a cow with turmeric and flowers. You ask him about beef. He goes silent for a long time. Then softly he says, "That time is past," because somewhere between 800 BCE and 200 CE, the sacred narrative shifted hard. Texts, like the Manusriti, begin to codify ahimsa, or non-violence, as a central moral principle. Buddhism and Jainism are gaining traction, both promoting vegetarianism as a spiritual path. And as these ideas weave into broader Hindu thought, the cow's status rises from important to untouchable. In the best sense, you sit with a Jain monk under a neem tree. He tells you that to kill a cow is to interrupt karma, to stain your soul with violence that echoes into future lives. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. His presence alone is as calm as a still pond. You nod, thinking of all those Vedic feasts and how quickly a culture can shift. What was once a ritual delicacy becomes a symbol of moral failure. And just like that, beef falls off the menu permanently. Now you're guided into a community kitchen in a city bustling with Sanskrit scholars and spice merchants. The cooks here don't just avoid beef. They use cow products in nearly every recipe. From curd sauces to ghee-fried flatbreads, one woman hands you a small bowl of lentils swimming in golden fat. She says it's a sacred meal, then winks. And nobody had to die for it. You sit on a straw mat beside a row of scribes, discussing a passage from the Mahabharata, India's sprawling epic. The heroes host a great feast. The debate whether it was vegetarian, some say yes, others whisper of buffalo stew. The record isn't clear, but the intent seems obvious. Over time, eating animals, especially cows, became less about ritual and more about regret. As evening approaches, you pass by a gosala or cow shelter where elderly cows are being cared for by volunteers. These cows don't give milk anymore. They don't plow. They just exist. And that's enough. They're revered as living symbols of dharma, of patience, of giving of the earth itself. One teenage boy sits beside his favorite cow, stroking her back while reciting verses from the Bhagavad Gita. He tells you his grandfather used to say that no king could rule a land that disrespected a cow. You wonder if it's just tradition or something more. And here's a detail that lingers long after cow meat disappears from temple rituals. You find stories of people performing cow penance. Did you accidentally kick a calf? Spill milk on sacred ground? Better donate a cow, or 10, to atone. In this karmic system, the cow becomes a kind of moral currency. You don't just revere her, you owe her. The stars blink into the sky, and the temple bells begin their nightly song. Somewhere deep in the sacred groves of time, the last beef feast flickers and fades, replaced by silence, prayer, and the rustle of grass beneath soft hooves. The fire dies down. No one's cooking meat tonight, just lentils. And ghee. Always ghee. You lie back, feeling the earth beneath you still warm from the sun. And you think, in this world, history doesn't just evolve, it repents. It's the middle of the night, and you're jolted awake by an unexpected sound. Trumpets. Not the celebratory kind. The kind that says, "Make way, royalty is coming." You scramble to your feet, rubbing sleep from your eyes, just in time to witness a procession that looks straight out of a dream, or maybe a surreal livestock auction. There at the front of it all is a king, crowned, painted, swaying on a golden palanquin, and directly behind him, dozens of cows, their horns painted red, hooves polished, draped in garlands and satin cloths. You blink, Surely he should be leading the way. Nope, the cows walk first. Because in this world, no matter how shiny the crown, a king follows the cow. You join the murmuring crowd and shuffle closer, whispering to a temple boy who's chewing a sugarcane stick. He grins and says, "They're going to the temple. He can't be crowned until the cows approve." Welcome to the curious case of royal cow envy, where even rulers knew their throne meant nothing without a divine bovine nod of approval. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In several royal traditions across ancient India, kings were ritually tied to cows. Before coronation, many had to offer cows to Brahmins, walk among them, or symbolically bathe them. The ceremony wasn't just for show. It was a reminder that Kshatriya power, royal warrior class, was subordinate to Dharma. And in this cosmology, the cow was the physical embodiment of that Dharma. In one kingdom, a coronation ritual involved walking a cow around the royal seat 3 times each circle, symbolizing cosmic order. No cow, no crown, that's just how it worked. You now find yourself inside a grand temple hall where the king, freshly anointed with sandalwood paste, kneels before a single pure white cow. She stands there motionless and possibly unimpressed as priests chant hymns in her honor. You think she might blink. That's good. Blinking is auspicious. And here's your quirky twist of the day. In some royal households, cows were treated not as property but as royal advisors. No, really. Some rulers kept a favorite cow near their chambers and consulted her before major decisions. If she soned off, mood it, was a yes. If she sneezed, well, cancel that war. You wander the palace grounds and find inscriptions on stone pillars detailing how many cows each king gifted during festivals. One boasts of donating 100 cows during a solar eclipse. That's not a typo. 100,000. You try to imagine the logistics: feeding, housing, bathing. Did they have an ancient cow task force? Was there a ministry of moo? Even in royal diplomacy, cows played a role. You're shown a treaty carved into copper plates between 2 kings, sealed not with blood or gold, but with the exchange of sacred cows. The animals themselves became ambassadors, symbols of peace, wealth, and mutual respect. It's like sending someone a gifted Rolex, but warmer and slightly more drooly. Of course, behind the grandeur, there's a layer of royal insecurity. Cows weren't just revered, they were tracked. Chronicles from Gupta-era courts mention herd counts as part of annual reports. A declining herd, bad omen. A cow with strange birthmarks. Better summon the astrologers. You're now taken to a smaller temple where a strange ritual is about to begin. The Raja's own body will be touched with ghee taken from the oldest cow in the herd. This act, known as Abhisheka, is meant to bind his fate to hers. If she prospers, so will he. If she falls ill, well, cue the royal panic. And yet not all kings were cow lovers. There's an apocryphal tale about one ruler, possibly fictional, possibly not, who tried to tax cows directly and was mysteriously struck with boils, hallucinations, and a nasty case of political rebellion. Coincidence, maybe. But his name was quietly erased from many records, which in ancient India is basically a historical death sentence. Historians still debate how much of this cow reverence was pragmatic theater versus genuine faith. Did kings just play along because the public adored cows? Or were they truly believers in bovine blessings? It's hard to say. But, considering how many temples, songs, and royal edicts revolved around cattle, one thing's clear. Optics mattered. You wander into a quiet courtyard where a stone cow statue stands in the moonlight. A passing guard tells you, this was once the royal cow of a Mauryan prince. When she died, they built a shrine over her bones, planted sacred grass around her grave, and declared the field untouchable for plowing. She gave birth to kings, he mutters, and they never forgot it. That line sticks with you, because here power isn't just about conquest, it's about connection to land, to people, to the sacred, and cows. They're the thread that weaves all of that together. The royal trumpet sounds again, this time fading into the hills. The cow procession vanishes into the distance, firelight glinting off silk horns. You sit by the steps of the temple and smile. In most histories, kings take center stage, but here they follow quietly behind. You're awoken by the gentle tap of a stick on stone, a rhythmic clack, clack, clack that echoes through the early morning fog. It's a dharmacharya, a teacher of sacred law, walking slowly through the village with a bundle of scrolls under one arm and a determined scowl on his face. He pauses in the square, clears his throat, and proclaims, "Tend to your cows before you tend to your prayers." No one blinks. Because in this world, law and livestock are one and the same. Today you're stepping into the rich and occasionally confusing world of dharma, not just religious virtue, but the full spectrum of right conduct, social duty, moral law, and yes, cow care. In ancient India, dharma wasn't just for humans, it extended to animals, especially cows, who were woven into the legal and spiritual code with almost obsessive precision. Your first stop is the village pustakagriha, a small library-like room filled with palm leaf manuscripts dried and curled like sleepy scroll snakes. A student recites from the Manusmriti, the great legal text of Hindu society. One must not injure the cow, the giver of milk, for she nourishes life and deserves protection as one would offer to a mother. That's not a metaphor. It's law. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Manusmriti and other dharmashastras went into astonishing detail about how to treat cows, from feeding schedules to injury penalties. Accidentally step on a cow's tail, repent by fasting and chanting prayers. Intentionally harm one, you're fined, shunned, or sent to wander the forest, repenting like a lactose-intolerant monk. Now for the quirky twist. Some villages maintained public cow defenders, literally officials appointed to monitor cow welfare and intervene in disputes. Their job titles were long and their job descriptions even longer. Everything from ensuring pasture rotation to checking for cow sadness. Yes, cow sadness. One text describes signs of bovine melancholy, including a refusal to chew cud and a tendency to stare into puddles. Very relatable. You follow the dharmacharya into a thatched roof assembly, where villagers are debating whether a certain calf should be adopted by another cow after its mother died. A young Brahmin reads from the Narada Smriti, a lesser-known text, with big opinions. A cow that accepts a calf, not her own, must be honored, for she transcends nature. You watch as the assembly blesses the cow with turmeric and song. The calf nestles close, blinking slowly. Case closed. As you linger near the village's sacred cattle shed, you realize this isn't just kindness, it's obligation. Cow care was a daily ritual of righteousness. Texts demanded clean bedding access, to shade ceremonial baths, auspicious days, and even astrological charts for calves. If your cow was born under a fierce star, she might need protective chants and a garland of chilies to ward off evil. Suddenly a commotion. At the far end of the pasture, a farmer's bull has broken loose and trampled through a neighbor's turmeric patch. The aggrieved neighbor is livid. The farmer bows repeatedly and offers, not money but a young heifer. As compensation, the dispute is taken to the Panchayat, a council of elders who quote from the Yajnavalkya Smriti. Their ruling: the bull's owner must replace the crushed crops and fast for 3 days to honor the spirit of the violated land. And the bull, temporarily exiled from the fields. It's justice, but with udders and penance. You ask the dharmacharya whether cows were ever subject to punishment themselves. He frowns, then chuckles softly. A cow is not judged. She is the mirror. If your cow suffers, the fault is yours. It makes a strange kind of sense. In this worldview, cows were moral litmus tests, measuring sticks of your dharma. If they thrived, so did your soul. If they suffered, it meant something in your life was out of balance. Now let's go deeper. Ancient texts describe ideal ways to die, and caring for cows near the end of life was a fast track to good karma. One passage suggests that if you're dying and you can't speak, you should simply place your hand on a cow. That alone may carry your soul forward. Talk about divine customer service. Historians still debate how strictly these laws were followed in daily life. Some argue that the idealized rules in Dharma texts were rarely enforced. Others point to archaeological evidence, specially constructed cow shelters, water troughs, and symbolic art as signs of deep societal alignment with these principles. The truth, as always, likely moves somewhere in between. You step into the back room of a scholar's hut, where intricate diagrams of cosmic order hang on woven tapestries at the center of nearly every one a cow. In Dharmic cosmology, the cow isn't just protected by law, she is law. She represents Rita, the divine truth that governs the universe. It's a lot to take in. You sit beneath a fig tree trying to wrap your head around a society where animals aren't just alive, they're legally essential, spiritually central, morally illuminating. A cow walks by utterly unfazed, tail flicking dust, into the sunrise, and just when you think you've seen it all, a young boy approaches and offers you a clay tablet etched with a single symbol, a cow's hoofprint. "It's a blessing," he says. "Place it near your heart." You do, because in this place obeying the law doesn't start with courtrooms, it starts in the barn. Today the air feels heavier, like it's swollen with invisible threads of fate. You're just beginning to see. You sit beneath the same fig tree, staring at the little clay hoofprint you were given yesterday now, tied with string and hung around your neck like a relic. A nearby villager nods and says, "It protects your karma." You nod back, not fully understanding but unwilling to take it off, because now it's time to understand how karma and cows got tangled into one long looping thread of cosmic consequence. You're led into a simple classroom tucked into the edge of the village where a teacher draws diagrams in the dirt with a stick. Circles, spirals, arrows pointing to stars. This, he says, is the cycle of samsara, birth, death, and rebirth. And, at the center of it all is the cow. You blink. Why the cow? He smiles. Because she gives and never takes. In ancient Indian philosophy, karma governs not just actions but intentions, consequences, and everything that ripples outward from a single decision. A kind gesture. Good karma. A selfish choice. Guess what? You're coming back as something small, anxious, and probably moist. But if you treat a cow well, feed her, shelter her, bathe her, love her, you create what some texts call Goseva Punya, a unique spiritual merit that's stronger than 1,000 temple visits. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In classical Hinduism, particularly the Bhagavata Purana and Mahabharata, service to cows became synonymous with self-purification and rebirth management. People genuinely believed that protecting cows not only helped in this life but also in the next, and the next one after that. Entire communities practiced cow charity as a form of soul insurance. Now for your quirky twist. In some temples, priests kept karmic ledgers. Yes, spiritual accounting books that recorded every act of cow service made by a devotee. Feedings, shelter donations, even how gently you spoke to a cow was sometimes noted. If your page had enough cow credits, you might just die with a front row seat to nirvana. If not, well, you might come back as someone's mosquito problem. As the morning warms up, you accompany a small caravan of pilgrims on what's called a Godan Yatra, a sacred cow-gifting pilgrimage. One elderly man is donating his family's prized cow Lakshmi to a hermitage in the forest. "She will carry my karma to the gods," he tells you softly. His sons look torn between reverence and sadness. Lakshmi seems completely chill. You walk beside them through dust and marigold petals along the path. Villagers come out to offer garlands and sweets, not for the man, for the cow. Children paint her hooves with red dye. A girl hangs bells around her neck. She's not just an animal anymore. She's become a vessel, and here's where things take a truly mystical turn. You arrive at a ghat, a riverside platform with long stone steps leading into sacred waters. The old man bathes himself. Then Lakshmi, reciting mantras with shaking hands. Finally, he places a garland over her horns, touches her forehead, and whispers something you can't hear. A priest declares the transfer complete. From this moment on, Lakshmi belongs to the temple. The man smiles. His karma, he says, is finally light enough to float. You ask one of the attending monks whether the cow understands. He chuckles. She doesn't have to. The universe does. You sit on the riverbank for a long time trying to absorb it all. This isn't just superstition. It's a philosophy of gentle responsibility. The cow doesn't demand sacrifice. She is the sacrifice, not in blood, but in patience, in embarrassances, silence in, simply existing and giving milk dung warmth and presence without asking anything in return. No wonder people started seeing her as the model of karma-neutral existence. Historians still argue whether this intense karma-cow connection was driven by religion or cleverly disguised agrarian self-preservation. After all, in an economy based on milk and manual labor, the more incentive people had to keep cows alive and well, the better society functioned. Some scholars call it moral economics. Others call it cow theology. Whatever the label, the result is, clear cows became the axis of reincarnation. The sun begins to set, and you're taken to a small shrine lit only by oil lamps. Inside, a painted image shows a cow swimming across a river, with a tiny human figure clinging to her tail. That's the Vaikuntha Ganga, a boy explains at birthers. Death, the righteous soul, crosses the cosmic river. By holding onto the cow, you try to imagine it, your body crumbling, your soul lifting like smoke. And there she is, your old cow waiting for you with soft eyes and a tail that cuts through the stars. Back in the village, children gather to sing cow lullabies. One song tells of a man who came back as a bull because he stole milk in a past life. Another praises a woman who gained paradise by giving her last grass bundle to a thirsty calf. You hum along the melody, easy and slow. The stars prick the sky. A cow yawns nearby. Yes, cows yawn. You lie back, the clay hoofprint pressed against your chest, and you finally begin to feel it, that quiet certainty that what you give comes back one hoofprint at a time. You awake to bells. Not temple bells this time, but small gentle ones tied to the necks of aging cows, their sound soft and uneven like lullabies half remembered. The sun is just beginning to push through the morning mist, and someone beckons you toward a stone-walled compound at the edge of the village. Today, your guide says, we visit those who can no longer give. You pause, the priests. He shakes his head. No, he says with a smile. The cows. Welcome to the Gosala, a sacred cow shelter, a kind of ancient retirement home for cattle who've served their time given their milk, worked the plow-birthed calves, and now just want to munch grass in peace. Except this isn't just a barn with straw. It's a place of honor, almost reverence, where cows are treated like respected elders on their final walk through samsara. You walk through the wooden gates and into a wide-shaded courtyard. Dozens of cows rest on clean hay beds. Some are blind, some have crooked legs. A few look like they've seen the rise and fall of empires. Volunteers move quietly among them, washing coats, trimming hooves, and whispering little prayers as they go. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By the early classical period, roughly 200 BCE to 400 CE, organized cow shelters began appearing throughout India. These weren't just makeshift barns. They were often attached to temples and maintained by donations from merchants, kings, and commoners. Sheltering an old cow wasn't considered charity. It was a duty, a deeply respected act of dharma. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some gosalas held naming ceremonies for every new arrival, often using auspicious terms like surabhi, fragrant Kamala lotus, or if they were particularly feisty, names like Agni, fire. One shelter, even Kermani, maintained a birthday calendar for its senior cows, complete with garlands and ghee cakes made just for them. You crouch next to an elderly white cow with a sway in her back and cataracts in both eyes. Her name is Sarasvati. A young boy is feeding her spoonfuls of soaked grain, humming a tune that sounds older than anything you've heard. You ask if she was once a temple cow. He nods, then adds, she never missed a festival. You walk slowly past rows of these dignified retirees. Some have horns dulled by age. Others rest their heads on stone pillows. It feels calm, like time has stretched out here into a soft, endless afternoon. A caretaker tells you about the rituals of release. When a cow nears death, she's bathed in warm water, adorned with fresh flowers and surrounded by hymns. Her last breath is honored. Her body isn't simply discarded, it's cremated, with rites or buried in specific holy spots, where the earth is believed to receive her with joy. You sit under the banyan tree at the edge of the compound and observe a group of priests arriving with offerings, not for a god but for one specific cow. Rohini, who has turned 20. That's ancient in cow years. Today she receives a planned, ceremonial meal of mashed banana, jaggery, and ghee. They chant her name like a mantra. Rohini munches with absolute indifference. She's a celebrity, and she knows it. But Gosalas aren't just sleepy sanctuaries, they're also community centers. Some double as schools where children learn ethics through cow care. Others offer Ayurvedic medicines made from cow derivatives. A few even hold cow storytelling, nights where old villagers recount legendary cows who outwitted thieves, cured kings, or glowed under moonlight. You're invited to one such tale. An elder sits cross-legged on a woven mat, and the children gather in a circle. The story about a cow named Anaya, who refused to eat during a famine so her owners could have her share. When she died, she appeared in a dream to her caretaker and said, "Kindness has no body, but it always leaves a scent. You pretend not to tear up. Now here comes the unexpected." In the far corner of the Gosala is a small cow hospital. Actual treatments. Bandages, herbal compresses. A young Brahmin trainee is carefully cleaning a hoof wound, muttering mantras under his breath. You watch. Fascinated pain. He tells you has weight. The gods measure how much of it we cause, and how much we ease. Historians still debate whether ancient Gosalas were mostly religious institutions, social welfare systems, or agrarian innovations. What's clear is this: cows were not discarded when they stopped being useful. In fact, their usefulness wasn't the point. Their mere existence was enough. You pass by a shrine where a mural shows Krishna, the divine cowherd, sitting beside an old resting cow. His hand is on her head, and both of them look toward the horizon, calm and unhurried. A plaque below reads, "In her silence she teaches you." The last lesson. The day draws to a close. A cow nuzzles your shoulder as you prepare to leave. You scratch behind her ears and whisper, "Thanks though." You're not sure if it's for the tour, or just for existing so gracefully. You step out of the Gosala and back into the noise of the village. Children are playing, pots are clanging. The world moves on. But somewhere behind you in the shade a cow sighs in her sleep, and the earth feels just a little more patient. Wake not in a village this time, but beside a winding stone path lined with flickering lamps. A breeze whispers through tall trees. And there's a scent in the air, incense, sandalwood, and something stronger, muskier. You turn a corner and then you see him, towering, glorious, made of black stone, but so lifelike you half expect him to charge a bull, massive, serene, poised like he's listening to the stars. This isn't just any bull. This is Nandi, the mount of Lord Shiva and one of the most venerated animal deities in the entire Hindu tradition. Tonight, you're not following cows. You're following their often overlooked cousin, the bull. Specifically, how he moved from farmyard muscle to divine companion, mythic protector, and symbol of cosmic masculinity. You step into the mandapa, the pillared temple hall where Nandi faces the sanctorum. He always faces in toward Shiva because devotion knows no distraction. Devotees stop to whisper wishes into Nandi's ears, believing he'll carry them straight to the god of destruction. You try it too. Your voice barely leaves your lips. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Nandi worship emerged prominently during the Gupta period, 4th–6th century CE, and became a standard feature of Shiva temples across the subcontinent. His image wasn't just decorative. He became a spiritual intermediary, a symbol of disciplined power and unwavering loyalty. But before he was carved in stone, the bull was muscle. Back in Vedic times, bulls were prized for their strength, plowing fields, hauling carts, and proving masculinity in the eyes of society. A farmer without a bull was like a soldier without a plough, sword, or worse, a gamer without Wi-Fi. As time passed, this brute force evolved into symbolic strength. In sacred art, the bull became a metaphor for dharma duty, virya heroism, and the stability of the universe itself. After all, some texts describe the cosmic bull supporting the prasik, earth on his shoulders, standing on 4 legs made of the Vedas. And your quirky tidbit. In several temples across India, Nandi statues are believed to be self-manifested, not carved, not placed. simply found in the earth, perfectly formed like the universe itself, coughed up a sacred animal. One, particularly famous one in Mysore, was said to grow bigger every year. Villagers used to sneak out at night to measure it with string. Spoiler: it never shrank. You're now guided to a festive gathering in honor of Matu Pongal, the bull-focused day of the South Indian Harvest Festival. Bulls are painted in vibrant colors, their horns wrapped in garlands, their bodies bathed in turmeric water. One bull decked out like a royal elephant is being fed sweet rice by a toddler with sticky hands. Music plays, drums thump, and everyone cheers as the bulls parade through town. You'd expect chaos, instead there's grace, even majesty. You ask a farmer about the festival. He smiles and says, "Without bulls there is no food. Without food there is no life. Why wouldn't we celebrate them like kings?" You follow the crowd to the edge of a field where a Jallikattu arena is being prepped. This traditional Tamil bull taming event is part of the harvest ritual. Equal parts sport ceremony and social frenzy. You won't be participating. You, like your bones unbroken, but you watch as young men attempt to grab the hump of a charging bull, hold on and ride it for dear life. The bull, of course, almost always wins. Some say Jallikattu originated as a marriage test. Win the bull, win the bride. Others say it was a ritual to showcase virility and appease the land spirits. Whatever the origin, the underlying message is clear. The bull is not to be conquered easily. He is power wrapped in patience. Historians still debate whether the reverence of bulls arose alongside cow worship or came later as a masculine counterbalance to the maternal cow archetype. Some point to Indus Valley seals with bull figures dating back 4,000 years. Others argue it was Nandi's association with Shiva that solidified his sacred status, anchoring the bull in temple cosmology forever. You now step into the quiet side corridor of a Shaivite monastery. A mural there shows Nandi meditating, eyes closed, legs folded, not charging, not working, just being. A monk tells you the story of how Nandi, born of a sage and a cow, gave up earthly pursuits and became the eternal gatekeeper of wisdom. In some versions, he's even considered Shiva's first disciple. Suddenly, the sound of conch shells cuts through the air. A special puja is being offered to the temple Nandi tonight. Offerings of bananas, ghee lamps, and jasmine flowers are placed near his feet. You kneel beside others watching, in silence, as a priest gently anoints the statue's horns with sandalwood paste. And then something simple and strange happens. One child leans forward, kisses the bull's stony ear, and whispers, "Tell him I miss him." You feel it in your chest, that this isn't just sculpture, it's a relationship. Before you leave, you're handed a small clay amulet shaped like a bull's head. "Strength and steadiness," the vendor says, "for the journey ahead." You step into the night. The amulet warm in your palm, and the stars above seem to pulse like drumbeats. Somewhere far behind, a bull exhales through flared nostrils. Calm, grounded, eternal. In a world of gods and kings, sometimes the one who waits at the gate holds the greatest power. You awake to the sharp scent of turmeric and something tangy. It prickles your nose and curls around your throat. You the smell to a practice-less, thatched hut where two women are crouched beside a bubbling copper pot. One stirs slowly with a wooden ladle. The other grins at you and says, "It's sacred medicine." You take one cautious step closer. The surface of the pot gleams golden, and the smell hits harder: cow urine. Welcome to a different kind of devotion. The world of cow-based remedies where the sacred isn't just symbolic. It's ingested, and sometimes rubbed on your face, or applied to your feet, or sprinkled across your floor to cleanse spiritual impurities and apparently persistent fleas. Today, you're diving into the bizarre, fascinating, and surprisingly enduring realm of cow byproducts in ancient Indian medicine and ritual purification. Let's start with the obvious ancient Ayurvedic texts, including the Karaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita. Two of the foundational medical treatises of India mention cow products repeatedly. Not just milk and ghee, which you've grown used to by now, but also urine and dung, both of which were considered cleansing, balancing, and occasionally delightful. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Cow urine, known as gomutra, was used in classical Ayurvedic formulations as a detoxifier. It was believed to balance the tridoshas, vata, pitta, and kapha, the fundamental energies that govern the body. Mixed with herbs, it formed the base of countless tonics, skin salves, and elixirs. Cow dung, meanwhile, was prized for its antibacterial properties and used in everything from wound dressings to floor polish. And your quirky tidbit: in some temples, cow urine was sprinkled in the air during purification rituals. Yes, like a divine air freshener. One priest even boasted that he kept demons away by dabbing gomutra behind his ears. Better than perfume, he told you with a wink. You didn't ask for a demonstration. You're now seated on a straw mat beside an elderly Vaidya, a traditional healer, who's mixing powdered herbs with warm ghee and a few drops of the sacred liquid. This is for fever, he says, gesturing for you to smell it. You do. It's not as bad as you expected. Earthy, pungent, and oddly comforting like compost tea from the heavens. He hands you a tiny scroll containing a recipe from the Atharva Veda, which includes ghee, cow dung, ash, honey, and camphor, said to cure headaches, cleanse the blood, and improve memory. You ask if it works. He shrugs. Depends on your karma. As the morning rolls on, you're invited to a cosmetic demonstration. Yes, really, cow dung mixed with turmeric and neem is applied to a young woman's face. For radiant skin, the beautician says proudly. And no pimples, the girl doesn't flinch. She looks luminous and mildly amused at your expression. You learn that dried dung cakes were not just fuel, they were considered protective barriers. Homes were coated in dung paste to repel insects and evil spirits alike. Pregnant women were advised to walk barefoot on dung-treated courtyards to ensure healthy babies. Stare at your feet and wonder if you should give it a try, and then you're handed a cup. Warm yellow, fragrant. If you squint your nose a bit, gomutra undiluted. The real thing. You hesitate. A dozen villagers are watching. A temple boy nods encouragingly. You lift the cup. Breathe in courage and sip. It's strong, that's all you'll say. You manage not to gag, which apparently earns you bonus karma. A woman claps and says, "You're part of the family now." Historians still debate whether the widespread use of cow waste in medicine was truly effective, symbolically potent, or just a clever way to repurpose farm waste in pre-industrial societies. Some modern scientists suggest mild, antiseptic properties in dung and trace minerals in urine might explain the tradition. Others insist it's mostly ritual theater belief carrying more weight than biology. You wander into a village school where children are learning chants to invoke health through cows. One verse translates roughly to, "From her tail to her breath." The cow is a stream of life. Her urine heals. Her dung protects her gaze, purifies. The soul? You wonder how that would sound on a billboard. Later, a group of pilgrims arrives carrying pots of ghee and baskets of dried dung to donate to a temple fire ceremony. You watch as the offerings are stacked neatly, blessed, then burned in a roaring Agnihotra ritual. The smell is smoky, spicy, and completely unlike any modern incense. This is the smell of prayer. A priest tells you. You notice a shrine nearby to Denuka, a little-known goddess associated with cow dung. Yes, there's a literal poop deity. She's honored by farmers and healers who whisper thanks to her for fertile soil, healthy homes, and healing. Flames. Night begins to fall. You sit in a small hut, your nose still tingling, your thoughts buzzing with 1,000 questions. But one thing is certain, nothing is wasted here. Every part of the cow is useful, sacred, integrated. Even the parts you usually run from. And maybe that's the lesson, to see value where others see disgust. To find purity in the unlikeliest places. To understand that in this world, even dung can be divine. You exhale, the stars are out. The breeze carries a faint, smoky sweetness. And the cup is thankfully empty. Morning light filters through a curtain of banyan leaves. As you return to the village center, where today's gathering is of all things a tax hearing. Men sit cross-legged on reed mats, each holding scrolls or sacks of grain. A scribe scribbles rapidly. A temple cow wanders nearby, utterly uninterested. You squint, trying to understand what's happening. A merchant leans over and whispers, "They're reviewing land taxes." You nod. Then he grins and adds, "Except cows. Cows are exempt." You blink. "They don't pay taxes." He laughs. They are the tax. Today you'll explore how ancient Indian economies, especially royal and temple systems, functioned with the cow not just as a symbol or sacrifice, but as a literal asset class. From land grants and temple endowments to state revenues, rural ledgers, the cow wasn't just sacred, she was statistical. You're invited to sit beside the village accountant, a wiry man with an ink-stained fingernail and a scroll nearly as long as a fishing net. He points to rows of numbers and cowhead illustrations. This is our Go Carni Patrum, the cow ledger. Every family, every cow, their age, milk yield, and temperament. You glance at one entry. Likes to kick during milking. Detailed. Here's your mainstream historical fact. From the Mauryan Empire onward, 3rd century BCE, administrative records often included cow censuses. Arthashastra, the famed political economic treatise, attributed to Chanakya, even prescribed detailed rules for cow supervision, including fines for neglect, abuse, or theft, and outlined how herds were taxed, or rather not taxed, since sacred cows and temple cattle were granted immunity. But, and here's your quirky tidbit, temples themselves could be taxed in cows. That's right, some kings, instead of demanding gold or land, would require temple institutions to deliver a fixed number of cows per season, especially for public festivals or royal celebrations. So yes, somewhere in ancient India, a temple priest probably stressed over a cow quota. You now travel with a royal Gomahishi, an officer assigned to supervise the royal herds. He carries a staff carved with cow motifs and a satchel filled with parchment. He explains that his job is to inspect government-owned cows, which were often loaned to villagers with the expectation of receiving milk tributes or a portion of the calves born. You ask how this differs from normal taxes. He shrugs. With coins you count, with cows you listen. A healthy moo is worth more than 10 silver pieces. Poetic. Weird, somehow accurate. He shows you a cow passport, a folded birch bark slip with a hoof stamp, and a list of owners. This one's been through 4 households, he says. Everyone wants her for her ghee. You resist the urge to ask if she has opinions about this. The two of you arrive at a small temple estate, where a land grant document is being read aloud. It begins, as many do, with, to maintain dharma and feed the fire of the gods, and ends with a list of donated assets: 7 mango trees, 2 irrigation canals, and 30 cows of docile nature, each marked with red ink. Cows, it turns out, weren't just given to temples. They were assigned for specific purposes. 1 for milk, 2 for festival processions, 1 for feeding orphans. You even hear of a bell cow whose only job was to walk through the village each dawn, signaling the start of prayer. Later, a Brahmin invites you into his home where he's just completed his annual Godakshina, a ritual cow donation made to a priest or teacher in exchange for spiritual merit. It's a big deal. He fasted for a day, purified the grunts cow with holy water, tied a blessed thread to its horn, and led it barefoot to its new home. This was my grandmother's cow, he says, touching her flank. She helped raise 3 generations. I give her now, not because she is old, but because she is precious. You nod. The ritual isn't about getting rid of a cow, it's about elevating her value through the act of giving. You ask if the king ever claims cows for his own purposes. Your host smirks. He tries. Apparently, royal officers sometimes sent envoys to collect extra cows during drought years, only to be met with villagers who'd already donated their best cows to temples. Sacred cows were untouchable. It was one of the few ways commoners could outmaneuver state power through spirituality. Historians still debate whether these cow donations were acts of deep faith or cleverly veiled wealth redistribution strategies. Some point to the rise of landless temple wealth, entire herds producing income for priestly elites. Others say the donations were genuine, driven by a belief that cows served as spiritual bridges between household, temple, and kingdom. As sunset falls, you pass a scribe carving cow symbols onto a stone pillar. It's for the census, he explains. Future kings will know we cared for our herd. You smile at the simplicity and the pride. You sit by a granary as the tax assembly ends. No coins clink, no seals are stamped, but a dozen cows are led gently to a nearby field, each one nodding slightly as if aware of her contribution. The village elder leans over and says, "You can't eat a cow, but she'll still fill your stomach." You think of it now, the milk, the ghee, the plowing, the fuel, the manure, the medicine, the taxes. You look out across the field where twilight paints halos around grazing bodies, and it's suddenly clear. In this economy, the cow isn't taxed. She is the treasury. The temple drums beat slow and low today, like a heartbeat echoing through the stone corridors of something ancient and immovable. You find yourself seated in a hall of marbled silence. Incense curls in lazy spirals toward the ceiling. On one end of the chamber, a simple wooden platform has been laid with turmeric, rice, and flowers, but no idol sits upon it. Instead, a single cow stands there, calm, white, unmoving. A priest leans toward you and whispers, "Today we crown a king." You glance around. Surely that's a metaphor, but no. This is the Abhisheka, the sacred royal anointing ceremony. And before any human ruler takes the throne, the cow must be honored first. Yes, today's journey winds through royal rites, temple corridors, and court rituals to explore how no crown in ancient India was truly complete without the blessing of a cow. It wasn't political theater. It was sacred sequencing. The cow came first always. You sit quietly as the ceremony begins. A golden ewer is lifted, and ghee pours gently over the cow's head. She doesn't flinch. Around her, priests chant verses from the Rig Veda. One by one, court ministers step forward and place rice, gold coins, and silk near her hooves. Then the soon-to-be king approaches, barefoot, eyes downcast. He touches the cow's forehead, bows, whispers, waits. Only then does he ascend to the throne. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In several documented traditions, including during the Gupta and Chola dynasties, royal coronation rituals often included direct veneration of cows, not as a symbolic nod, but as a core element of the dynasty's process. Texts like the Rajadharma portions of the Mahabharata and Manusmriti detail that kings should perform Gopuja, cow worship, before accepting the crown as a sign of humility before Dharma. And here's your quirky twist. Some kings took this reverence so seriously that they included a cow in the royal audience chamber, not as a pet, but as a living witness to justice. If a king lied, ruled unfairly, or ignored Dharma, it was severed, believed. The cow would suffer first, stopped eating, grew sick, or worse, turned her back on the ruler. You're shown one such chamber, a vaulted room filled with faded frescoes, where an alcove once held the justice cow. A steward sighs and says, "She outlived 2 kings. The third gave up politics and became a monk." You ask if this was normal. "Nothing was normal," he replies. "Everything was sacred." You now step into the royal archives where old copperplate grants are displayed under glass. One of them reads, "Let it be known that in the year of the sun elephant, His Majesty offered 30 cows to the temple before wearing the crown. Let none question his worth." It hits you then. Donating cows wasn't just generous, it was proof of legitimacy, a signal that the ruler served not just the people but the eternal order. Kings who skimped on their cow rituals were seen as suspect, or worse, inauspicious. You're guided through a small museum where painted scrolls tell the story of King Harita, who tried to skip the cow blessing during his coronation. According to legend, his reign was immediately plagued by drought, rebellion, and a cow-shaped birthmark on every baby born that year. It was considered a warning. The next king made offerings for 7 days straight just to be safe. In a dusty prayer room, a monk shows you the 5-fold coronation vow carved into temple walls. "I shall protect the cow, I shall honor the earth, I shall serve with humility, I shall judge without greed, I shall bow to the hoof before I rise with the crown." You ask him if these oaths still matter. He nods without hesitation. Even a weak king who protects cows brings fortune. Even a strong king who neglects them invites ruin. Later, you walk past a throne room replica where an actor dressed as a medieval ruler performs the ancient Godakshina ritual. A cow is led into the chamber. The king removes his crown, kneels, presses his forehead to her flank. It feels like theater, but the silence in the room says otherwise. Everyone is watching, as if this single moment balances the fate of the kingdom. Historians still argue whether these rituals were deeply spiritual or strategic public relations. After all, associating yourself with the sacred cow gave rulers instant legitimacy. It bound them to moral expectations that could limit tyranny and frame kingship as a sacred duty rather than inherited privilege. But even if it started as performance over centuries, it became belief. A throne without cows became unthinkable. In some regions, if a coronation cow died during the ritual, the ceremony was postponed for a full lunar cycle. Imagine the year in Et. Headlines: Royal delay crownless until further notice. As evening sets in, you're taken to the outskirts of the old palace where a shrine sits beneath a peepal tree. This was once the burial site of the kingdom's most beloved ceremonial cow, Nanda. Her horn is enshrined in silver. Devotees still stop to lay flowers on the tiny tombstone. A child whispers, "She saw 4 kings and only 1 comet." You chuckle, and then you sit quietly, because here even kings don't rule alone. They rule with blessings, with humility, with hoofprints at their feet. You glance upward toward the stars. Somewhere maybe a new king waits to be crowned, and a cow is watching. By now the sun seems to rise more slowly, as if even it understands the sacred weight of each hoofstep in this land. Today's road is less familiar. It doesn't wind toward a temple or gosala. Instead, you follow a prochant, endeavor, royal, messenger robes dusted with the red of long travel, leading a small herd of cows draped in bells and silk, their horns tipped with silver. Diplomatic gift, he explains casually, as if that's something people say every day. You raise an eyebrow. Not gold, not jewels. He shrugs. Gold offends, jewels tempt, cows unite. And just like that, you're stepping into a quieter, often overlooked corner of history. The cow, as a diplomatic envoy, a soft, warm, mooing bridge between kingdoms. Because in ancient India, gifting a cow wasn't just generosity. It was an international statement. Here's your mainstream historical fact. From the Mauryan period to the early medieval kingdoms, cow gifting formed part of formal treaties, peace offerings, and marriage alliances. Temple records, copperplate grants, and royal inscriptions from regions like the Satavahana, Pallava, and Chola dynasties mention hundreds, sometimes thousands of cows being offered in good faith during diplomatic visits. In fact, according to the Arthashastra, a well-trained Goduta, literally a cow envoy, could be appointed to travel with herds and negotiate political agreements. Imagine being the guy who not only delivers the deal but also keeps 20 cows from eating someone's vegetable patch along the way. You accompany this envoy and his herd across dusty plains. At each village, people emerge with water and fodder, not for the humans but for the cows. It's their blessing we seek, your guide mutters, as if the animals themselves are orchestrating the treaty. By midday, you arrive at a rival kingdom's border. A royal official stands waiting beneath a red canopy. He scans the herd, counts hooves, inspects horn polish, and finally nods. Acceptable, he says. The cows are led in with gentle fanfare, and everyone breathes easier. Your quirky twist. Some historical accounts mention cow diplomacy gone wrong. In one case, a southern king sent a herd of cows to a northern rival as a peace offering. The cows, untrained and thoroughly unimpressed by royal protocol, trampled a clocker, ceremonial garden, and knocked over a sacred statue. The insult sparked not peace, but a miniature war. Moral: always vet your bovine envoys. You're taken next to a royal courtroom where a poet reads aloud a verse from a treaty. Let the milk of peace flow as freely as the cows we offer today. Let none draw sword while hooves still tread between our lands and theirs. The metaphor is clear. In a world where cow killing is taboo, where cows represent life order and dharma, gifting them is like saying, "Here, I give you a piece of my soul." You sit beside a historian leafing through dried manuscripts. He shows you one document, a marriage alliance contract where the dowry includes 40 cows of golden breed, whose breath sweetens the grass and whose gaze heals sorrow. He laughs. No pressure for the groom. He also points out that cows were sometimes gifted with escorts, not soldiers but singers, who would walk with the herd and sing songs of blessing, ensuring they arrived in emotional harmony. You imagine Spotify playlists for cows, ancient and surprisingly on-brand. Later, at a market square near a temple town, you watch a royal proclamation being read aloud. A ruler has sent 108 cows to the high priest of a neighboring kingdom, to ensure an eclipse pacifying ritual succeeds. This isn't just good politics. It's interstate spiritual insurance. If the moon misbehaves, everyone wants their cows on the record. Historians still debate how sincere these gestures were. Were cow gifts, spiritual diplomacy, or soft power bribes disguised as religion? One camp insists they were loaded symbols, the ultimate gesture of mutual dharma and agrarian solidarity. The other side says, well, cows are expensive. It was strategic. Either way, the optics mattered. A king who gave cows wasn't just generous. He was seen as wise, dharmic, stable, and deeply connected to RTA, the cosmic balance. Before sunset, you're invited to watch the return leg of such a mission. The neighboring kingdom, in response to the original herd, sends back a smaller but symbolic group. 2 calves, 1 cow and milk, and a decorated bull named Arjuna. The envoy bows, the crowd claps softly, no gold changes hands, no swords are drawn. Just animals. Just trust. As night falls, you lie beneath a canopy of stars and listen to the herd breathe. 1 cow chews grass slowly beside your ear, unbothered by the weight of history. She is both message and messenger, and you realize in a world where war is loud and trust is fragile, a soft step, a warm flank, a gentle moo may speak louder than any royal decree. You're jolted awake in the middle of the night, not by drums or temple bells this time, but by the dawned, hurried whisper of footsteps over dried leaves. You peer out from under your blanket of woven grass, just in time to see a small group of figures slipping through the darkness. They move quickly, glancing over their shoulders. One of them leads a cow on a rope. Another hushes it when it snorts. You rub your eyes. Are you witnessing a cow theft? Congratulations, you've wandered into the wild world of ancient cattle, rustling a problem so persistent, so serious that entire legal codes, caste duties, and community militias were built around preventing it. Because in a society where cows are sacred, stealing one was worse than stealing gold. You follow at a distance. The group moves like they've done this before, cutting through the fields, ducking past prayer flags. By the time you reach the village edge, they're gone. But the damage is done. By sunrise, the alarm is raised. A man wails. Women cover their heads. The panchayat convenes immediately, and a group of young men are sent off on horseback, armed not with swords but ropes and wooden staves to retrieve what's been taken. And here's your mainstream historical fact. The Dharmashastras and royal edicts from the Gupta and post-Gupta periods often listed Gohata cow killing and Goharana cow stealing as capital crimes. Punishments ranged from heavy fines to exile, and in some extreme cases enforced pilgrimage or public shaming rituals that involved walking naked through the village while covered in cow dung. Yes, really, you sit beside the village headman as he checks the herd register. 3rd theft. This monsoon, he mutters. They come from across the river. You ask why someone would risk such serious consequences. He replies with a sigh. In famine, people gamble. A good cow gives milk, calves, manure, ghee. That's 10 years of survival. What's one night of sin against that? Still, it's not just petty theft. Some of these groups are organized rustlers known in ancient texts as Gokura, Sanghas, networks of thieves who targeted wealthy villages and temple herds. Some had their own branding irons too. Remark, stolen cattle, changing horn paint patterns or dyeing tails with herbal concoctions to disguise identity. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some villages created cow vigilante squads known in one region as Gopala Bandhus, whose sole job was to patrol fields at night. They were usually young, unmarried men with fast horses and a deep sense of righteousness. And yes, a few stories suggest they took their jobs way too seriously, staging dramatic chases, singing cow protection anthems, and competing to recover the most livestock. You travel with such a band now. They ride fast, they ride light, and they carry horns, not the battle kind, the musical kind which they blow in patterns to communicate through the dark. One long tone, all clear. 2 short ones. We've got tracks. They show you hoof prints near a dry creek bed. Someone notes a broken twig. Another finds a cow hair on a tree. It feels detective work, but with more mooing. By noon, the trail leads to a small outlaw camp. The band waits, then bursts in not with violence but chants. They surround the rustlers, invoke Dharma, and demand the cow back. No swords drawn, just community pressure and the threat of cosmic backlash. The thieves surrender. The cow is freed. You return triumphant. The animal is garlanded. Women welcome it with tilaka marks on its forehead. The vigilante boys are fed sweet rice. The village breathes again. Historians still debate how widespread these cow crime rings really were. Were they just exaggerated fears in agrarian lore? Or was there a real underground economy of black market bovines? Some point to epic tales like the Mahabharata, which contains entire battles sparked by stolen herds, as evidence that cattle theft could threaten entire political alliances. In one temple archive you find a poem written by a monk lamenting the loss of a single cow named Ganga. She fed the orphans. She carried my karma. May the man who took her find only curdled milk in his next life. Harsh, but understandable. That evening, a village bard performs a dramatic reenactment of the Great Cow Rescue. It's equal parts devotional, action-packed, and weirdly romantic. The hero cowherd rides through thunder, faces off with thieves. And finally, this is real, forgives them after they cry and offer to care for old cows for the rest of their lives. The crowd erupts in applause. As stars emerge, you walk with one of the village boys who helped in the rescue. He tells you he's training to be a Gorakshaka, a protector of cows, not just for justice, but for his own soul's merit. If I save one cow, maybe a bulls, 100 souls drink her milk, he says. That means I did something good 100 times. You stop. That's a math you hadn't thought of before. Cows don't shout, don't accuse, don't strike back. But their absence leaves a wound. And in this world, justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it moves quietly, waiting to come home. The morning mist is just starting to lift when you find yourself seated beneath a mango tree, sipping warm milk and watching a quiet procession. But it's not a parade or a coronation today. It's a court session. Yes, an actual trial. Villagers sit in a wide semicircle around a raised platform of packed earth. The headman adjusts his shawl. A scribe dips his stylus into a pot of ink. And at the center of it all, chewing cud and blissfully unaware of the legal tension, is a cow. You blink. Surely she's just scenery. Nope. She's the witness. Today you're diving deep into the surreal and sometimes hilarious world of cows in ancient Indian law, not just as sacred beings or economic resources, but as legal entities. Because in this land of dharma and debate, a cow could be property, plaintiff, proof, and presence all in the same sitting. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Texts like the Narada Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, and portions of the Arthashastra treat cows as central subjects in civil and criminal cases. Disputes over ownership, accusations of neglect, unlawful sale, false branding cows were always in court, even if they never said a word. Today's case. A neighbor claims the cow in question was his, stolen during a flood 6 months ago. The current owner insists she wandered into his barn and chose to stay. The court must decide, who does she belong to? And here's your quirky tidbit. One ancient legal test involved releasing the cow at a crossroads. Whichever house she entered first, she chose as her rightful home. Some villagers even tried to bribe cows with sweets or whisper secrets into their ears beforehand. You watch slack-jawed, as this is exactly what they're about to do now. The cow is led to a fork in the road dust, rising with each placid step. Two homes sit opposite each other. At the signal she's released, she sniffs. She pauses. Everyone holds their breath. And then she wanders off into a field to chew on a bush. The crowd groans, the scribe sighs, the trial resumes. Later, the court examines horn patterns, birthmarks, and even gait familiarity, as in, does the cow walk like the one from before the flood? You can't make this up. The final ruling: shared ownership, rotating milk days, and a vow that neither man will raise his voice near her again. You sip your milk, mildly overwhelmed. But it's not just ownership trials. Cows appeared in all kinds of legal dramas. You're told of inheritance disputes, where daughters argued for their share of sacred cows. One particularly fiery tale involved a 1/7 mother-in-law who secretly branded her daughter in law's cowherd with her own clan mark, claiming the animals as her spiritual dowry. The fallout lasted 3 generations. Later, you visit a temple archive and find records of a cow witness case. A man was accused of trespassing on holy land. His defense: "My cow led me." The priests deliberated, then declared, "If the cow walks the same path again on her own, we believe you. She did." Case dismissed. Historians still debate the legal agency of cows, whether these rituals reflect actual jurisprudence or a symbolic drama designed to emphasize dharma over reason. Some scholars say it was animistic justice. Others say cows functioned like living contracts whose presence affirmed truth or falsity by divine proxy. Meanwhile, you're shown a set of clay seals used to record cow lineage. Each cow was assigned a symbol: lotus, conch, crescent moon, pressed into wax for trade or gift agreements. These seals traveled with the animal, much like passports, ensuring her legal identity could not be forged. Your guide, a grinning priest with a penchant for drama, recounts a legendary tale. 2 temples once fought over a cow named Sundari, who had the rare gift of dream blessing. Villagers claimed she visited them in dreams and healed their illnesses. The case went to a spiritual tribunal. Final verdict: where Sundari sleeps, on the 3rd night there, she shall serve. She chose the quieter temple near a river. The losing priests tried to win her back with mangoes. She did not forgive them. That evening you sit by the village fire listening to another tale: a cow who stepped into a sacred fire pit during a wedding and was immediately declared a messenger of Agni, the fire god. A court convened to decide whether she could ever be milked again. Final ruling: nope. She was retired to a gosala with garlands and lifetime sanctuary. A farmer beside you shakes his head fondly. "Cows don't lie," he says. "They just walk the truth." You lie back on the soft ground, thinking about everything you've seen: cows giving testimony, cows as mediators, cows whose decisions influenced marriages, borders, and family wealth. And it all makes a strange kind of sense, because in this world where the gods speak in silence and justice walks on 4 legs, sometimes the wisest thing you can do is follow the hoofprints. The sun is barely cresting the horizon, casting long golden streaks across the village path as you're handed a clay stylus and an invitation you didn't expect. "Come help with the census." You blink. Census of what? The head scribe smiles. "Of cows, of course." Today you're diving into the wonderfully bureaucratic but spiritually vital world of the ancient cow census. And if that phrase made you chuckle, know this: it was dead serious. Because in ancient India, keeping track of your cows wasn't just good agriculture. It was governance, prosperity, and cosmic order, all rolled into one steady moo. The scribe hands you a worn palm leaf chart: columns, rows, symbols for breed, age, milk, yield, temperament, even names. "Every cow is counted," he says. "Every year, twice if there's a drought." You follow him through the morning mist into the fields. Cow by cow, he notes. Shivani, 5 years old, gives milk at dawn, mild temperament. Rakta, 7, no milk, moody in monsoon. Gauri, recently calf tail injury, healing. Each entry is precise, detailed. This is not casual record keeping. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Cow censuses were conducted throughout ancient India, particularly in large temple estates, royal lands, and village collectives. Temple inscriptions from regions like the Chalukyas and Rashtrakutas show meticulous records of how many cows were owned, donated, or gifted. Some of these lists were even carved into stone, literally immortalizing cow data for generations. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some ancient bureaucrats believed cows had birth stars, astrological charts drawn at their birth to determine their destiny in the herd. One famous entry recorded a cow whose star chart predicted she'd 7th give milk, as sweet as divine nectar and hooves that never crack. You think she'd have made an excellent influence today. You spend the day walking from one cowshed to another, observing how different communities track their herds. In the Brahmin quarter, cows are counted with hymns. In the farmer's field, with chalk marks on the wall. And in temple grounds, a priest uses colored threads: green for high yield, red for illness, yellow for miracle birth cows. Yes, that's a category. One record keeper shows you a tax scroll from a century ago. It lists 142 cows from 3 villages, sorted by size, milk type, and age. Alongside the stats are family trees, cows traced back 4 or 5 generations with notes, like daughter of Sita who cured fever by her gaze. You're not sure what that means, but you highlight it anyway. The logistics are staggering. You ask how one keeps cows from being counted twice. The scribe says, that's where the tail bells come in. Apparently every cow is assigned a unique bell note or horn pattern to differentiate her. Some villages even developed vocal cues, songs that only certain cows respond to, passed down through generations of herders. You test one. A low hum, rising and falling. 3 cows turn to look at you. You're honored, slightly terrified. Later, you're led to the royal ledger room where giant tomes track empire-wide cattle assets. Inscriptions here detail the number of cows gifted during coronations, festivals, famines. You find one decree. In the 3rd moon of Kree, harvest His Majesty ordered the counting of all sacred cows in the realm, for they are the heartbeat of heaven's order. Historians still argue whether these records were strictly religious rituals, agrarian data management, or both. Some suggest they were ways to monitor wealth and loyalty. If a village had too few cows, it signaled famine, too many, and it's suggested hoarding or corruption. One king reportedly dispatched secret cow counters, disguised as bards, to sniff out false reports. We'd watch that Netflix series. In one quiet hamlet, a girl shows you her cow diary. It's a stitched folio with sketches of each cow, their names, habits, even friendships. She tells you which ones prefer shade, which ones like music, and which one, named Boomy, only eats if told. She's beautiful. You test this theory. It works. By dusk, you return to the village square, exhausted but strangely fulfilled. The final tally is announced: 112 cows, 98 calves, 2 bulls, 1 goat. That won't stop following the cows but is now honorary. Ceremonial lamps are lit. Ghee is poured into a small fire in gratitude, not just for the cows, but for the knowledge of them. Because knowing your herd, naming your herd, respecting the details of their being, that's devotion. You lean back, palm leaf in hand, the names flickering in the torchlight like poetry. Not just animals, not just assets, but beings worth counting, knowing, and loving. Because in this world, a civilization doesn't rise by monuments alone. It rises when it remembers the name of every cow. The night sky stretches like silk above you, pinpricked with stars that seem to blink with quiet approval. The scent of Crydas, jasmine, hangs in the air. Everything is still, and then soft chanting. A procession of oil lamps, white robes, quiet tears. You're not at a temple this time. You're standing on the banks of a wide river watching something profoundly tender, a cow funeral. A priest gently brushes the brow of an old, motionless cow. Villagers place marigold garlands around her neck. A child clutches her hoof. No one says a word for several minutes. Then the chanting begins again. Tonight, you are here to witness one of the most intimate spiritual beliefs in ancient India, the conviction that cows do not just serve in life. They guide souls in death. Welcome to the idea of cows in the afterlife. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Ancient scriptures like the Garuda Purana and certain Upanishads describe cows as psychopomps, soul carriers, who aid the righteous on their journey after death. It was believed that if you performed the proper rites and treated cows well in life, one would carry you across the cosmic river Vaitarani, after death, directly toward liberation. And here's your quirky tidbit. In some communities, people would grasp a cow's tail as they lay dying, believing it formed a spiritual tow rope to help ferry their soul past the obstacles of the underworld. Some temples even kept a present, special cow, just for this purpose, trained to stand calmly beside the dying and offer her tail at the moment of passing. Tonight's ritual is part of that tradition. The deceased, not a person but the cow herself, named Shanta, meaning peace. She served in the temple for 16 years, gave milk to orphans and priests, and was once part of a ritual to bless a prainer marriage that had struggled to bear children. She was considered a cow of virtue, and now in death she is being thanked for it. You sit beside a temple bard who whispers to you the story of the Go Marg, or path of the cow. In this journey, The soul of the deceased rides atop a celestial cow, who walks the firmament with unshakable calm. Each of her steps, the bard says, erases karma. Her breath carries hymns. Her tail brushes away fear the soul may tremble. He adds, but the cow never does. As the funeral continues, the villagers perform the Go-Don afterlife rite, donating a cow in Shanta's name to a temple farther down the river, ensuring her spirit is mirrored by continued service through another's life. You watch as the body is placed on a small wooden raft adorned with white cloth, turmeric, and flowers. The raft is lit gently, reverently. It floats down the river, casting golden reflections onto the water like shimmering blessings, and then silence. Later, you're invited to a recitation of afterlife verses from the Mahabharata. One passage describes the soul of a just king being met at death by a white cow, who leads him calmly through narrow gates guarded by his own forgotten deeds. Only, because he had honored cows in life, did those gates open softly. The priest who reads the verse looks at you, eyes gleaming. You see, the cow is not only the mother of life, she is the midwife of liberation. Historians still puzzle over how these beliefs evolved. Some suggest they reflect a synthesis of Vedic fire ritual, animistic animal worship, and the karma rebirth framework of early Hinduism and Jainism. Others note the surprising overlap with older Indo-European traditions, where sacred cows too were associated with the sun, rebirth, and protection. You are led to a cave shrine carved into the riverside cliffs. There, etched into stone, is an image of a cow standing on a bridge made of stars. Below her, small human figures rise from the earth, arms lifted, eyes wide with hope. This, a monk tells you, is the bridge between life and light. Only the cow can walk it without falling. By candlelight, you write her name in your journal. Shanta, not just a cow, but a soul carrier, a teacher, a guide. You recall another verse whispered earlier. As she gave in life, so she lifts in death. Her hooves touch no shadow. Her breath breaks no vow, and you begin to understand this wasn't mourning. This was graduation. You return to the village under a sky, now silvered with clouds. A soft drizzle begins. You pass a small shrine where someone has left fresh grass beside a clay cow figure. No name, no plaque, just gratitude. In this world, you realize dying well means walking beside a cow one last time. And if you're lucky, she'll walk with you a little farther than the rest. You awake to a strange stillness. No bells, no chants, no bustle. Only the distant rattle of train wheels, a rooster who's clearly lost his sense of time, and the clink of teacups. You're not in the past anymore, you're in colonial India. The temples are quieter, the village rhythms have shifted. The old cow with the decorated horns is gone, replaced by a solemn silence. And somewhere over the next rise stands a British administrative office. You can feel the difference before you even see it. Today you walk into the odd and often awkward world of colonial cows, where the British Empire met the sacred cow and promptly didn't know what to do with her. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By the 19th century, British colonial officials were routinely confused, frustrated, and occasionally terrified by the status of cows in Indian society. They couldn't understand why a cow could block a road and nobody would move it. Why riots might erupt over a slaughterhouse. Why an entire legal case could hinge on a cow's mood. They had rules, India had reverence. Clash was inevitable. You visit an old railway yard where a local guide tells you about the time a cow wandered onto the tracks and refused to move. The train conductor, a young Englishman, tried to honk, then yell, then regrettably throw a shoe. The cow didn't flinch. 2 hours later, the station master paid a Brahmin to perform a small ritual. The cow turned peacefully, and the train continued. The British officer wrote an entire report titled, Obstruction by Sacred Cattle. It was 36 pages long, and here's your quirky tidbit. The British actually proposed a Cow Control Act in some provinces meant to keep cows off roads, out of public markets, and away from government buildings. None of these measures succeeded. One cow reportedly wandered into a courtroom and stood behind the judge's chair. He ruled in her favor. It said he never admitted it, but he did bow slightly on his way out. In the city of Benares, you visit a dusty archive filled with colonial correspondence. One letter reads, "It appears the locals consider the animal divine. We recommend no further experiments with beef rations near the garrison." Especially during festivals, the conflict wasn't just cultural, it was political. The rise of cow protection movements in the late 19th century turned the sacred cow into a nationalist symbol. Hindu reformers, religious leaders, and village coalitions all began organizing to protect cows from slaughter, particularly by Muslim butchers or British meat suppliers. Cow reverence had become a rallying cry. In one corner of the archive, you find a poster from 1893, a cow with a halo flanked by the words, "Mother of the Nation." That same year, protests over cow slaughter in several cities turned violent. Some historians trace the roots of Hindu-Muslim tensions to this exact moment, a divine animal pulled into colonial bureaucracy and sectarian politics. You travel next to a colonial courtroom long abandoned but still echoing with the past. A trial is being reenacted by local students. The defendant, a Muslim butcher. The accuser, a cow protection society. The verdict doesn't matter. What matters is the tension. You can feel it. The cow is no longer just a spiritual figure. She's been pulled into identity, ideology, and resistance. Historians still argue whether colonial cow reverence was amplified by the empire's misunderstanding, or whether it strengthened as a form of cultural resilience. Did people lean harder into tradition to resist imperial power? Or did the British, by ignoring the cow's meaning, make things worse? You find a British manual on native religious practices which devotes 8 pages to the cow, describing her as docile, obstinate, sacred, unclean, essential, and in need of better management. You can almost hear the confusion bleeding through the ink, and yet not all British officials were dismissive. Some tried to understand. One colonial officer, after years in a rural post, reportedly refused to eat beef for the rest of his life, saying, "If this land has a soul, it walks on 4 legs, and the Paraniflas and saying verse soul never hurries." You return to the village where cows still roam free, though fewer now. Trucks have replaced carts. Electric fences protect fields. But at the temple, the cow still stands, older, quieter, but still there. An elder tells you his grandfather joined a cow protection march during Gandhi's era. "We walked barefoot," he says, "not for protest. For humility, she gave us life. We owed her our steps." You sip chai beside him, the past and present mingling like steam. This land has been invaded, ruled, divided. But never once has it stopped feeding cows, because in the end the colonial rule came and went, but the cow stayed always. It's your final morning in the village. The first light pours like liquid honey across the rooftops, catching in the dust, glinting on brass urns, and spilling across the still sleeping backs of cows. You sit at the edge of a field wrapped in a simple shawl. Your notebook, heavy, with names, stories, hoofprints, and centuries, and yet you're not done. Because today you see it all alive. A small girl walks past balancing a pot of milk on her hip. She waves at a calf who trots over tail swinging. Her grandmother sweeps the courtyard with a bundle of neem twigs, pausing to scatter grain before the family cow like it's second nature. No chance, no ceremony, no tourists, just life continuing as it always has. Today you're witnessing the echoes of the sacred cow in modern India, where her legacy still threads through temples, markets, headlines, and homes. Reverence hasn't faded. It's simply woven itself into the background hum of daily existence. You walk through the bazaar where cow-shaped statues sit beside phone chargers and bangles. Temple calendars feature glossy images of Kamadhenu, the divine cow of abundance posed beside gods and waterfalls. A vendor sells ghee lamps, stacked like golden candles, and explains how his mother still insists on lighting one for the cows of the world every Thursday. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Modern India is home to over 300 million cows, and laws governing their treatment, slaughter, ownership, and even movement vary dramatically across states. Some states have strict cow protection laws, banning slaughter entirely. Others permit it under specific conditions. This has made the cow a political lightning rod, a symbol, a battleground, a flashpoint. And here's your quirky twist. In parts of rural India, some families still consult cows during big decisions. A girl in one village tells you dead serious that her cousin delayed her wedding because their cow mooed 3 times in a row, while, facing south, That's apparently bad. You visit a school where children are learning Sanskrit shlokas praising the cow just before a math lesson on decimals. One boy shows you his drawing of flying cow shooting lasers at demons. It's absurd. It's brilliant. Later, you walk past a shrine where a tech worker on vacation kneels quietly before a stone cow and mutters a prayer. She reminds me to breathe, he tells you. Everything else moves too fast. Then you attend a cow protest, peaceful, impassioned farmers, monks, activists, some chant, some hold signs, some stand silently, palms pressed together. One young man reads poetry into a microphone about the silence of cows in a world too noisy. Kare. You realize the cow is no longer just spiritual. She is cultural memory, political metaphor, identity badge, and moral barometer. Historians still debate what the cow really means to modern India. Is she still sacred or symbolic? Our current cow politics, a continuation of ancient dharma or a distortion of it? Opinions clash. Real cows while graze quietly between intersections. You return to the Gosala where it all started. The caretaker points to a young girl leading her cow to water and says, "That one was born the day you arrived." You nod. She blinks at you. You bow without thinking. And now, as you prepare to leave, you walk once more through the village square. No parade, no ritual. But as you pass, the people nod. Not at you, at the cow walking beside you. She flicks her tail and walks ahead, as she always has, as she always will. The night is still now. The stars above hum faintly behind drifting clouds, and the sounds of the village have fallen away like sand through fingers. You lie back on a woven mat. The cool earth beneath you, grounding everything you've heard, seen, and wondered. The cows are asleep. Some stand quietly. Others curled in straw. Their breaths deep and slow. Even their dreams, you imagine, are steady. You remember the chants, the fire offerings, the scribes, the scrolls, the laughter of children measuring cows by stride. You remember a calf's breath on your palm, the hush of a village court when a cow chose a path, the tear that slipped down a man's cheek as he handed over his dearest cow, not in grief but in faith. So much has changed, and yet so much hasn't, because the cow is more than symbol, more than ritual, more than even life itself in this land. She is continuity, quiet grace, a rhythm that outlives dynasties, languages, and kings. In your world, things are fast, loud, restless, but here she teaches slowness, stillness, a kind of sacred patience. You breathe in. The air smells like hay and sandalwood and dusk. You exhale. And the earth doesn't ask for more, so let yourself rest now. Let the stories drift. Let the hoof prints fade, and if sleep takes you across distant rivers or starlit bridges, perhaps there will be one waiting. Four-legged, steady, sacred, ready to walk beside you quietly again.